standards, right education system.
I'm the former Frank Key.
But the Northwest pass, we really need somebody different.
Your career, you're used to winning a lot. It was everything to us.
7 or 8 weeks of two-a-days.
They really made me appreciate
We're allowed to win.
he's coming in and we'll be shooting the whole time.
Let's go back real quick to the Enid Walk of Fame.
And of course, we have training in confined space.
Legitimate maybe to know a little more.
A good safety tip on that, Steve.
Putting a hat on and getting out there and doing the job.
The television model that you watched growing up.
Houston, this is the International Space Station.
City Connections begins right now.
Hello again, I'm Steve Kime with the City of Enid. Thank you again for joining us on City Connections. We have a return engagement, return visit, if you will, with Congressman James Lankford, representing district, or the 5th district, I should say. Congressman, you're
actually
always welcome.
Actually, the whole state now.
It's the whole state.
That's right.
I didn't realize. Of course, I'm up to speed on everything, as you can tell. Okay, well, thank you for that correction. Well, congratulations on the promotion then.
Yeah, I'll take it from the Senate side. Yeah, I was in the 5th district in Congress, and now doing the whole state in the Senate.
Okay,
yeah.
Very good. Well, anyway, we're thankful that you're here. Congressman, being born and raised in Oklahoma, farmers and ranchers are near and dear to my heart, salt of the earth people.
Yep.
And sometimes they have a tough time here in Oklahoma. Wheat harvest is not so good sometimes, but recently they've had these fires that have been devastated. And I know that you've toured the areas, you've done your part to show up,
right.
show your compassion, and to listen to everyone. So can you kind of tell us from your role, when you're in D.C., what can you and other congressmen do for the farmers and ranchers affected by fires and just really disasters? Because when you're in D.C., it seems like you might be a long ways from Oklahoma, but you want to help.
Yeah,
so what can you do?
Yeah, the heart's here, obviously. So one of the unique things about being in the United States Senate is covering 77 counties and realizing how different we really are as a state. I mean, timber production in the southeast part of our state is very, very different than corn and hogs and wheat and cotton everywhere else. And so you deal with the differences in ag, really, in the state. We have a really, really diverse ag economy, not only from livestock, but from what we're raising. So food, fiber, everything is pretty diverse here. So a couple things you've already mentioned. When we have disasters, it affects all of us. One area of the state, one area of the economy, one family gets affected, whether it's a tornado, whether it's wildfires that we face so much in the northwest side of the state for so many years in a row. Those are big issues. So FSA, Farm Services, they should step in immediately and to be able to help with disaster relief. They've been exceptionally slow nationally. It hasn't been the Oklahoma folks, but have been nationally. Where if you have a FEMA disaster, it may be 30 days and you get aid. With FSA, it can be 18 months. Well, that's too long to be able to get aid. So we've started through the process, try to figure out why does it take so long for FSA to be able to step into disaster relief aid, and how do we fix that? How do we make it a better system closer to what we have in FEMA? The next big thing is we've got to deal with farm policy, just with the Farm Bill. Farm Bill is not something that comes up every year, it's every few years, but it's time. That actually expires this year. It's time for another Farm Bill. So the Senate's working through that process right now. It has both the agricultural parts of it, the commodities sections of it, but it also has the SNAP program and the food assistance programs. Those two get married together to be able to do the Farm Bill, and that ends up being the most controversial. The House has done a lot of work on this already. We started on the Senate. But one of the things that we want to add to the food assistance program is if you're able-bodied adult with no children, you should work, and that be a part of the food assistance program. I just don't think it's that controversial to be able to do that. Work is not punishment. You're not punishing people saying you have to get this punishment if you're going to get food assistance. This is just encouraging people to be able to lift it. The SNAP program is designed to be temporary. It's designed to help people get back on their feet and get going. And so we're working on that section of it to be able to get good work requirements on folks to be able to help people escape from poverty.
Congressman, the other evening I was watching the news and I saw the story and it perked my attention. It was interviewing a gentleman, an officer at Air Force Base in Texas, and they were concerned about the wind energy and the wind turbines and the impact there. We all know Oklahoma is an energy state, but we also know, and sometimes we forget, that it's a big military state. And as you drive in northwest Oklahoma, across really any part of Oklahoma, you notice more and more turbines, especially here in the Enid area in northwest Oklahoma. So my question is, how can everyone get along and be happy? And what is your role, if any, in everything that's going on? Because, you know, we're concerned about Vance and every other place as
and
well.
we should be. Yeah. Anytime the federal government stops to be able to look at all the different bases and ask the question, is every base here needed? Can we combine bases for efficiencies? One of the key tests on that's what they call the BRAC test on it. One of the key tests that they're going to go through is, are there any impediments to the growth of this facility? In other words, if we add another runway, could we do that to expand the facility? Well, if there are too many wind turbines in the area, or they don't have good airspace, or they don't have good flyover space, or the radar scene doesn't work real well, then they would say, no, let's move to another area that doesn't have those same disturbances. So it may not hurt the growth right now, but it sets us up in the future to be at risk for a base closure. And we want to make sure that we're protecting both. And I agree, we are an all the above energy state. We get a lot of attention for doing oil and gas production, coal production on the eastern side of our state, but we have a lot of wind, a lot of solar, and we have growing footprint in wind and solar, being a major player in those markets. So we have hydroelectric power on the eastern side of the state. So we've got a lot of power in various forms. We need to be able to do it. So the two big questions, one of them's already been answered. Oklahoma has a new law saying if we're going to add a new wind farm, it has to be clear with the Department of Defense. You have to ask the question, does this interfere with one of our military bases? That's a good idea. Just force that communication, that cooperation. The second thing is we've got to still establish locations and heights. A lot of the wind companies are now saying we'll get a lot more wind power if we double the height of that wind tower. So they're looking at 5, 6, 8 years in the road, down the road, and saying we don't want to just have more wind towers, we want to have each of those towers twice as tall. Well, what does that mean to radar signal? How does that affect our weather radar? How does that affect our military radar, our aircraft? What does that really mean for the area around a base? And so we've got to be able to establish those parameters. That's unresolved, but that can be resolved in just some time and attention and cooperation.
Well, we're moving into summertime, and I encourage folks to get behind the wheel of the car and get the family together and drive out I-40 West, and you'll see a lot of wind turbines up real close. Or here in northwestern Oklahoma, you'll see a lot of wind turbines. It's just amazing how that growth. And we are excited about economic development. We are excited about wind energy, but again, that challenge is making sure it's win-win all the way around. Well, Congressman, I'm not sure how tuned in or how much information has been shared with you about Enid's recent project of trying to get some water from eastern Oklahoma here to Enid. And we've embarked on this project, the Call Lake Pipeline Project. And for Enid, it could be a $300-some million project, which is pretty expensive for a community of Enid size. And again, it's a several-step project in identifying how to get a pipeline 72 miles or water 72 miles to Enid. Is there a role, or what role would you see that the federal government would play to help the Enids across the country, but right here in Oklahoma? Money's tight. You just can't do this. But is there a role for federal government to help us out? Because we have determined, that this water is the new gold. And everybody keeps saying that, and they're realizing if we have water, good things happen.
Yeah, communities can't grow. You can't have industrial development. You can't have residential development. None of those things happen without water. So it is a basic commodity to be able to manage. And Oklahoma would be a good example of cooperation between the federal government and our state and local entities. Call Lake would not exist, except it wasn't a federal project decades and decades ago. You can take a lot of other projects around the eastern side of the state especially and see how much water storage is there and how much protection there is from flood based on what's happening in the Army Corps of Engineers, what's happening with an entity called FERC, which deals with a lot of our management for water resources as well as also hydroelectricity. So there is a lot of back and forth on it. Most water projects are local water projects, but some of the funding, sometimes it's low interest loans, sometimes it's grants for some of the permitting processes, sometimes it's just access and working with Corps of Engineers on how we get permitting done in an appropriate time period. Those are areas where we can cooperate, and I've been tracking this project for several years now as it's moved from an idea to a route, and now it goes from a route to permitting and financing to actually development and actually bringing water in. But it'd be a very significant issue for all of Oklahoma, not just for Enid, but for all of Oklahoma, because if the water comes east to west to Enid, then there'll be a lot of folks west of Enid that'll say, hey, can we tap into Enid as well, and to be able to get access to what you're doing already.
I think sometimes folks lose sight that our water source is well water. We don't have a Grand Lake. We don't have a Eufaula. We don't have 10 Killer and things of this nature. So water is important to us. And here at the City of Enid, we've learned a great deal about the process. It's just not dig a hole in the ground, stick a pipe, and move water over. It
Right.
takes a little bit of coordination. Well, Congressman, my dad served in the Navy in World War II at a whopping 18 years of age, and so did all of his brothers and all of my uncles as well. And one of my uncles, who lives in Del City, participated in the honor flights that were taking place. And my good friend here in Enid, George Bellman, is a 95-year-old World War II vet, and George is my hero. And when I see him, I just wonder if we're doing enough for veterans, and I try to do my part. And I'm sure you're asked as Congressman to do a variety of things for our veterans, whichever time period they'd served. How are we doing? What is your assessment? What's your view? How are we doing taking care of our veterans?
We're getting better at it, actually. There's been some pretty dramatic changes. Even in the last week and a half, the president now signed a bill that we've worked on for a long time, dealing with choice for veterans and for their health care. It's been one of my great frustrations in the Senate, is that when I talk to VA individuals and when I work through that process with them, they'll say, yes, if the veterans will all come here, then we'll make sure that we take very good care of them. Senator Inhofe and I worked on a project about 2 years ago to be able to help the VA basically hold their people more accountable. That if there was someone at the VA that wasn't doing a good job, the VA administrator could fire them and could replace them with people that are doing a good job. That's an authority that they desperately needed. They now have. When I sat down with the new director of the Oklahoma City VA last year, sat down in his office, the first thing he did is he pulled out a document and said, here's a list of all the people that we fired based on the authorities that you and Senator Inhofe gave us. They're trying to be able to fix the issues that they have at the Oklahoma City VA and the Muskogee VA and in other areas. The second thing, though, I was just alluding to, we just passed, and that is giving veterans more of an ability to be able to choose the health care provider that they want to have. If they want to get their health care taken care of in Enid, rather than going to Oklahoma City to the VA center, they should be able to do that. If they want to get cancer treatments here, rather than going out of state for cancer treatments for some of these areas, which the VA is required, they should be able to do that. That's better for their families. It's better for them as a patient.
Sure.
And basically, it honors them as individual. It always frustrates me that our medical systems that are out there that are federal systems, if you're on the Medicare system, you can go anywhere you want. But if you're on the VA system, we choose for you where you can go. Well, that treats two groups of folks often that are senior adults completely different in the way that we handle them. Our veterans should be able to have access to be able to go get health care where they choose to get health care. We just passed that. The president's just signing it, and we can begin to be able to press forward on making those real changes.
Very good. I appreciate that update. Speaking of veterans, I remember reaching out to years ago when my father was living, reached out to a congressional office, and I requested one of the flags that was flying around the Capitol or the Washington Monument, and I wanted the particular flag on my dad's birthday. So years later, once I got a flag from that office, I gave it to him for his birthday, and he was really honored to have a flag that was flown in Washington, D.C. And that's my introduction to this. I'm getting to a question, trust me. Besides tours, flags, Academy nominations, people are watching, what else can the congressman help me with? You don't have to go through all 27 things,
Right.
but what are some key things that people just lose sight of that you help?
One of them you just mentioned is just fun to be able to do. People do want to be able to give a flag to somebody on an anniversary or birthday or whatever it may be that's flown over the U.S. Capitol. Obviously, we can help them line that up. We can help them with tours of the White House, with U.S. Capitol, with Library of Congress. If they're coming to D.C., we can help line that up. In fact, we have on Wednesday mornings with something we call Java with James. Every Oklahoman that's in town on Wednesday morning can come over to my office, and at 9 o'clock on Wednesday mornings, we just have a pot of coffee on, and as many Oklahomans are in town, we get a chance to meet each other, and we just get to visit for a while and to be able to talk. So when you come to D.C., make sure you come by there. We have an e-newsletter that some folks may or may not have. We have tens of thousands of people that are on it here in state. If they want just an update, every 3 weeks we send an update. Here's what's happening in our office, what's happening in Washington, D.C., bills that have passed, things that have been voted on, big disputes. We'll kind of give the behind-the-scenes information on some things. They can get on that list. We'll send it out to them free to just give them some unfiltered information to be able to get access to that. We have an awful lot of folks that we do casework on, and a lot of people don't even know about this. We'll find out someone is dealing with a veterans issue, let's say.
Okay.
They're trying to deal with, their dad had a bunch of medals that they earned, but they never actually got the medal. They were at the end of World War II. It was chaotic in the breakdown. They earned the medals but never got it. So they'll call our office. We'll start working with the Department of Defense, pulling old historic records and actually get those medals actually sent out to their dad or to their uncle or their mom or whatever it might be that actually earned that. We work with a lot of cases with the VA. Where the VA will give an answer to a veteran and they'll say, no, we disagree with your service disability rating, and we'll work behind the scenes with the VA to try to actually get records corrected so that they get the most fair compensation that they can possibly get. We do that same thing on immigration issues. We'll have a lot of folks that'll call us and say, I'm fighting through an immigration issue, come help us. And so we'll actually go to bat with them with these federal agencies and see what we can do to actually be able to resolve unresolved issues. I call it bumping the record needle. Now, most folks that are under 40 don't know what that means. But if the record needle
I still have my album, so yeah.
Well, if the record needle gets stuck, you just hear the same thing over and over again, and a lot of people experience that from the federal government. They'll call an agency, Social Security, disability, whatever it may be, they're getting the same story all and over and again. When they call our office, we'll say, let us call them, make that same call. We'll try to bump the record needle and see if we can't get you an answer, so you're not just stuck in limbo and waiting. So we are a resource to everyone in Oklahoma. And one thing I can tell you on this, Steve, we don't ask political parties. We have folks all the time say, you just take care of Republicans. You're a Republican, you don't take care of Republicans. No, I don't. On our constituent services, we take care of everybody. We don't ask what political party, if you vote. We just want to know, are you an Oklahoman? And if you are, we serve you.
Well, I speak highly of your electronic newsletter. I received that, but it's obvious I'm not reading it close enough to know your jurisdiction.
The whole state, all 77 counties.
But I do receive the newsletter and encouraging people to do so. Thank you for joining us today on City Connections. Our special guest, Congressman James Lankford, in Enid today, visiting and speaking, doing a variety of things, but we're just pleased to have him at the Enid Television Network studios. Congressman, I was looking at your website, and I want to read the statement that I found on your website, and you can say if it's true or not.
Okay.
But it says, physical barriers and technology should be increased to secure our borders. That's what I had in quote. So how are we doing on securing the border?
Getting a little better on that. Some improvements have been made. In fact, if other folks want to go to our website, they can go to langford.senate.gov, G-O-V, and they can get a chance to track that same information. The president's been pretty clear. The Department of Homeland Security has been very, very clear. They're not looking for a 2,000-mile long, 30-foot tall wall. That's not what they're looking for. And some people envision that's what it is.
Sure.
That's not what they're looking for. They want to be able to have technology and barriers in place to be able to make sure we have a clear border. There's nothing wrong with having a clearly marked border that we can enforce. When there's a city on both sides of the border, though, we should have a big wall there in between, because folks will say all the time, if you put up a 30-foot wall, there'll be a 31-foot ladder over it and they'll just crawl over the top. Well, that's fine, because really all you're looking for with a wall is to slow people down crossing it, and so you can actually interdict those folks and pick them up. Because if they're going to break the law and cross that border voluntarily, we need to be able to get people there to arrest them. If we can put technology and physical barriers in place so that we can actually pick people up when they're illegally crossing the border, then that's what we need. Some areas of the wide open desert, you just need an infrared camera that can look for miles and miles and miles. And then a sign that says you're crossing an international border in the United States, don't cross. That gives us enough time to be able to interdict. In high trafficked areas, you've got to have a bigger wall, a bigger barrier. At the end of the day, I tell people all the time, there's nothing wrong with having a clearly enforced border. Every country in the world wants to be able to know who's there, who's a citizen, who's a non-citizen, and then to be able to help enforce that back and forth. The president's just added about 33 miles of wall that we gave him funding for. That's what they're doing this 6 months. It's in far South Texas in one of the largest drug trafficking corridors in the country. They're adding additional walls there. They're repairing the wall along about 650 miles of fencing that already exists. Some folks, there is no wall there now. That's not true. There's 650 miles of fence already on our southern border, but a lot of it needs to be repaired. So the Trump administration is trying to go through and to be able to repair the areas of the fence where it's down. So that has already begun as well.
Well, we certainly appreciate the update, because sometimes we hear, if we rely on the news, we hear challenging stories, different stories, and it's almost like we just pick which version that we want to hear or believe. So we appreciate that.
Yep, it's already started, and there are lots of folks say there's nothing happening. It's not true. No, it has already begun. Now, is it all 2,000 miles of everything? No, it's not, but it's doing it a section at a time and getting it moving.
Great. The last time you were here at the Enid Television Network studios, we touched just briefly on your background at Falls Creek. And I'm a product of Falls Creek from the early 70s. and that was way, way, way back. But I've been asked here recently, when you talk to the congressman, ask him this question, and that question is there anything as a director of Falls Creek prepared you for being in Washington, D.C.?
Sure.
And what would that be?
So I was at Falls Creek 15 years. It was amazing ministry, and anyone who's ever been there knows full well really what happens there. And it's just a really remarkable place.
There weren't air-conditioned cabins when I went.
Well, there are now, and that's the nice part. There's air
Back in the
conditioning
dark
now.
ages.
Indoor plumbing and air conditioning, so it's a pretty advanced society down there.
The only
now.
air conditioning was at B.B. McKinney Chapel,
Right.
so you wanted to go sing.
Everyone wanted to sing in the choir
there was
because
air
you
conditioning.
got to practice there. Well, there's no B.B. McKinney Chapel anymore, but there is still air conditioning all over the place. But no, there's a lot that's actually transferable. The one thing that's at Falls Creek is taking care of people and serving people. I mean, that's
Okay.
really what you're doing. For any of us that work on staff there, we know we're serving God and serving people. I think you can still do that in Washington, D.C. There's nothing illegal about serving God and serving people. And so for me to do what I can to be able to help serve in the way that we can, learn as much as we can, to be able to help work through the big issues, and we have a lot of them through the course of our days. We're going to continue to be able to work through that. I do have a running joke with one of the members of my staff that he and I joke around all the time. I tell him working with juveniles for 20 years really prepared me well to be able to work in Congress. But at the end of the day, if you're going to have a heart for service and for people, you should be able to do that in a local church. You should be able to do that in a ministry like Falls Creek, or to be able to do that in Congress as well.
You've shared what you've been working on regarding work with ranchers and disaster and things of this nature. I'd like to give you an opportunity to discuss something that you're working on that's really impacting folks here in Oklahoma that we haven't discussed. Is there anything that comes to mind that you'd just like to be able to share and give a quick update on, saying, well, you know, this really impacts Oklahomans and this is how I'm helping?
So we try to work a lot on economic development.
Okay.
Quite frankly, helping people have options so that they can make their own decisions in their lives. It's not the role of government to be able to tell people what to do and how to live their life, but it is a role of government to be able to help protect justice, to be able to make sure that things are fair for those individuals and they can have the same opportunity that the person next door to them has. So a couple of things we're working on right now. Trying to get judges in place in our federal courts. We have several openings in our federal courts. We're trying to work through that process to be able to get some of our federal court openings done, and so we can get people access to the courts faster so they can get justice. We're working on the tax policy. A lot of people may know about the tax bill that came through, but they forget about it because it's still being rolled out this year. That tax bill has dramatically decreased the taxes for every Oklahoman. It's been a very big issue for a lot of people. Most folks have seen in their check go up and their tax withholding go down. That's because those withholding tables are changing. For some people, if they don't make much money, it may be $50. For other folks, it may be more. If they make more money, then obviously there's more money that's still coming back to them. But for everybody, that'll make a big difference on it. There's also more jobs coming because if companies don't pay as much in tax, they can pay their employees more, and we've seen a bunch of companies give raises this year, or they hire new people, and that's been another thing that we've seen in Oklahoma a lot, is a lot of new hiring, where folks that weren't hiring in the past are adding 1 or 2 new jobs this year because they could. So that's given people more options. We have the lowest unemployment rate that we've had in 18 years. A lot of that's due to that tax bill and that change in what happened. So that's a big deal for us to be able to have just the shot so that people can get justice and they can have those opportunities to be able to do it. Along with that, we've already mentioned before the Farm Bill. It's exceptionally important to us. We talked a lot about energy production and about aerospace. When you talk about aerospace and energy, a lot of that's trade policy. We don't use all of that here. We export pieces, and so we've got to have good trade policy. We're trying to work with the Trump administration right now as they're trying to be able to work out trade issues. It's been a real difficult issue because the Trump administration really wants to solve all the trade issues, but they want to resolve all of them worldwide all at one time. And so we're trying to push them and say, get a couple of these solved. We got too many things in the air that we're juggling right now. Let's try to get some things resolved right now, and so we can solve our long-term trade issues, and trying to work that through right now because that helps everybody. People don't think that trade affects them in Oklahoma. Think, you know, we do everything locally in here. That's just not true. A lot of the cotton that we grow in Oklahoma gets shipped to China, turned into fabric, then gets shipped into Central America where they turn it into a shirt, and then we end up buying in a store right back in Oklahoma. But it started in Oklahoma as our original cotton. A lot of our energy is that way. A lot of our produced products are that way in manufacturing. So there's a lot of connections that we have on trade. It's really important to us.
And I think we're real close to that here in Enid, being one of the largest grain elevator storage facilities, knowing that that's going to the Gulf of Mexico and then it's going around the globe.
Fertilizers coming in, wheat's coming out. It's a big issue for us.
You've already mentioned your electronic newsletter, and you've also mentioned your website. Just a quick question on what's the best way to reach you when people think, well, he's off in D.C., he's busy. Yeah, he may have somebody here in Enid or Oklahoma City, Tulsa. But what are your recommendations when folks really, maybe they're not computer savvy?
Sure.
So what's a good way to reach out?
So if they're computer savvy at all, just go into our website, lankford.senate.gov, G-O-V. That has all the contact informations on it. It'll have all of our social media platforms, it'll have phone numbers, it'll have physical addresses. So if you want to mail us a card, you can do that. Or if you want to be able to email us, you can do it through that system as well. That's the easiest way to be able to do it. I also have a representative that serves all of the northwest part of the state. His name is Tanner, but he'll be at a lot of meetings all over the place. I'm in D.C. usually about 4 weeks, then back home for a week. This is a week that I'm back home for this week traveling around the state. Then I'll be back in D.C. for another 4 weeks. And I do that year-round. With the Oklahoma legislature's typically in from the beginning of February to the end of May, the U.S. Congress and the House and the Senate, we're in year-round. So we're trying to stay connected, and the way that I do that's through Tanner. That's around town all the time, so a lot of folks will see him. If you want to get in contact with us, just our numbers are there on the website as well, or you can call just 405-231-4941 and ask for Tanner, and they'll connect you with him as well, and we'll make sure we can get as much information to you as we can. And it doesn't matter what the issue is. Some folks say, who do I need to call about whatever it may be? Call Tanner. He represents all of northwestern Oklahoma. He'll worry about who to be able to contact from there.
One-stop shopping is always is always
easier.
nice. Well, Congressman, that's our list of my list of official questions, if you will. And I don't think I provided this opportunity last time, but if you don't mind, I'd like for you to speak to the camera there with the red light and speak from your heart. But I just wanted you to have this opportunity to just share what you needed to share.
Well, that's very kind of you. Let me just say this. There are an awful lot of folks that think that all the problems that we face as a nation are going to be solved by Washington, D.C., or by some vote that happens in Washington, D.C. And while there are important things that we need to do in D.C. and a lot of things that we need to vote on, the issues that we face as a nation, by and large, are not issues of a vote in D.C. Washington, D.C. is not going to change the country. The country is going to change Washington, D.C. And the way the country gets changed is our families, our churches, our communities, our nonprofits. Most of the issues that we face are really family issues, whether that be drug issues, whether it be criminal justice, whether it be education issues, whether it be employment issues. The more that we can invest in our families and then we take care of our families, the better we help our nation. So I always tell people, you want to do something really patriotic for the country, take good care of your family. Take care of the older folks in your family, the younger folks, mentor a young couple that's just recently getting married, help them understand how to be able to stay married and how to be able to continue to invest in their family. Stay very engaged in your church and through the nonprofit work that's happening all around the state. That's how we're going to turn around the attitude of a state and of a nation, is by serving each other. It's not demanding D.C. does something, though we have a job to do. It's making sure that we take care of our neighbors and of our family. That's how it really turns around. I think we quietly know that in our hearts, but we think it's so much easier just for Washington, D.C. to solve this. It doesn't get solved that way. You may have a vote, but the real solution is really going to be taking care of each other and taking care of our families. So continuing to be able to do that's a big gift.
Well said.
Yeah.
Congressman, thank you so much.
Thanks, Steve. Thank you.
It's an honor for you to stop by the Enid Television Network studios. We always look forward to the visit. Thank you for the work that you're doing, representing us, and feel that connection to know that you're on the job for us, and we sincerely appreciate this.
Thank you.
Thank you for being here.
Appreciate it very much.
And thank you for being here with us today on City Connections. Our very special guest, Congressman James Lankford, representing all of Oklahoma. Thank you again for being with us. I'm Steve Kime with the City of Enid. Until next time, make it a great day. Thanks for watching.